Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this lovely playground stage at South Summit Day 2. My name is Helena, and I'll be your MC on this stage this afternoon. And it is a pleasure to start with the program. What is in the program? Come on, wake up, wake up. A ver, who knows? What did you come to see? You know what you know? Or you're just sitting because there's a chair and there's air conditioning? IoT. Excellent. We're going to talk about IoT, the word in everybody's lips. I wonder. Well, I had prepared all these figures about how IoT is growing, billions here, billions there, but I was just listening, and these guys are panelists, and I said, what am I going to say? They know everything about it. So, how is your French, by the way? Would you like to have a panel in French, just for the sake of it? Yes, that's how vive la France, aïe, or whatever, francophones. Well, they might do it in French because our moderator hasn't arrived yet, but doesn't matter, because here we start on time. So, we're going to talk about IoT, and I'm going to introduce you our panel. They are the managing partner at Encore Capital VC, Jeff Clavier, the partner at Hacks Accelerator, Benjamin Joff, and wait, I have to say all the numbers, the names, you know. Go, Jeff Clavier.
You just called me.
Yeah, but you wait until it's okay. And Nicolas Giordano from Iris Capital Principal. Now, round of applause for everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Jeff, Benjamin, and Nicolas, and Tobias, which is non-existent, don't worry. If he comes, he will join us. But these guys are part of the South Summit family. They know this house really well. They're going to speak in another panel here and there. So they're going to moderate themselves. They're old enough, grown-ups. So off you go, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is kind of unusual. We actually did meet our moderator, but he's not there, so we're going to self-moderate. And you have three French dudes. We're going to talk about IoT representing different perspectives. So I'm the Silicon Valley America side.
I'm the kind of Asia/US side.
And more the European Franco-German side.
So to just get started, we thought we would sort of define a little bit what we're talking about in terms of industrial IoT. It's sort of a very broad topic, and so Benjamin started to think about how to slice the different sort of sectors or meetings that we could cover. So you want to?
Yeah. So I think when people, so maybe let's start by also introducing a bit what we do. So we're a very early stage investor, called Hacks, part of a fund called SOSV, $400 million under management. And Hacks branch invests only in hardware. We've done 200 hardware investments. A number of them, a growing number of them actually, is in industrial and enterprise hardware. So what do we mean by that? Is generally things related to manufacturing, but also all sorts of automation. And within the factory, within also heavy industries, there's kind of different ways to look at IoT. One way is to think, okay, we have all those existing machines that are really expensive, and we feel they're kind of getting outdated. We think we could make them better by putting maybe some extra sensors or analytics on them. So that's one way, kind of upgrading existing machine. The other way is to add new machines that can do things that other machines couldn't do before, new technologies or new things that were not able to be automated before. So that's kind of second way. And then there's a third way, which is to take some machines from the factory that are big machines and shrink them down so that you can take them out of the factory, put them into smaller places or workshops to do like desktop manufacturing and other things. So that's kind of one way to look at it. That's maybe Jeff, if you want to also tell us about what you do at Uncork and your view on IoT.
Uncork has been around for 14 years. It started as Softec, and that was one of the very first micro VC funds or firms in the Valley, which I started because, as it's really hard to believe today, it was very challenging for entrepreneurs trying to raise a seed round of a few $100,000 to find anyone to fund them. So started as an angel investor and eventually raised one of the first micro VC funds in history back in 2007. And my interest in hardware essentially happened a few years into the history of Uncork when I became the first investor in Fitbit, because I was wondering whether it was feasible to do cheap or capital-efficient hardware sort of development? Answer is no, by the way. And IoT, as we were sort of discussing, is something which has been around for a long time. Internet of Things is by no means a new concept. This is something that I've heard of as a potential, which is just about to happen around the corner for about 20 years. And today, that's why you have a lot of skepticism if you try and build a startup in the space, because people will say, well, I've heard this story in this pitch 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and the companies haven't succeeded. I like the way sort of Benjamin tried to segment the opportunity. The way we think about it at Uncork is more around sensors and platforms. So the retrofitting of machines, manufacturing lines, or industries like mining, transportation, and so on and so forth, need the sensors and the connectivity to get more information on what's going on, trying to predict downtime in maintenance, and essentially optimize so you can actually do more, produce more with the same sort of machines.
Okay. So Nicholas, tell us about your company and how you guys look at IoT.
Sure. So at Iris Capital, we are mainly a France and Germany venture fund. We have made most of our portfolio in Europe, some of it also in the US and Israel. To be honest, we're looking at the industrial tech space very recently. For 12 months now. I've done 2 investments in that space in the last 6 months. And to kind of take on what you guys are saying, I feel that there is, specifically in the industry space, 2 major trends that are allowing new developments to occur. So the first one is, like in all of you, there is local compute power, edge computing coming into factories and shop floors. So that allows a certain number of local computations and analysis to happen. And then there's the second part of the trend, which is bringing connectivity. And today we see that in very different RFID, Bluetooth, ultra-wideband, or broader low-band networks like Sigfox or LoRa technology, for example, we see that larger scale connectivity get into the manufacturers. And if you take a step back, that's really interesting, because if you look at the manufacturing process, there is few things that are less good to be modelized. A manufacturing process in itself is hundreds and thousands of parameters coming together to get one single output with specific characteristics. So those kind of processes are very, very good for software and AI analytics.
Sorry.
Hello, Tobias.
Our moderator has arrived.
This is German punctuality.
Absolutely.
This is the first time in the history of my extensive career as an MC that the moderator has arrived after the panel. After. You're supposed to be before. Germans.
I really apologize. I don't know what went wrong, but it was in the calendar. So
We're fine.
It's okay.
we're fine. Can I still start from scratch? I did it all.
Well, we already did the intros and the definition of IoT.
We'll update you.
I think when I prepared for this panel, and of course I'm very honored to have all these people here, I looked up everyone and I tried to find kind of a common theme. Yeah? And you're already deep in the topic, but my kind of opening line was, is this actually really a thing, this industrial IoT? Yeah? And I think none of us that we are sitting here could claim that we've been doing this for forever. Yeah? So we somehow kind of discovered it along the way. And I would actually like to start with Jeff. I mean, you've probably been around the longest from all of us. Yeah? And I think looking at your investment track record, it's been diverse and it's not always been in that area. And so what was the moment of truth when you saw this is actually a thing?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I was sort of saying at the beginning that I've been a VC for 18 years, and I've heard of IoT, Internet of Things, being mentioned and as a massive opportunity for every of those 18 years. And I think, to me, there's always been sort of this issue of adoption. So 2 things. One is, what is the adoption rate of the technology, and what is the unit economics that actually enables the adoption. And I hope, because I've been really sort of interested in industrial IoT for the past couple of years, that we're now at the point where sensors, compute power, connectivity is actually cheap enough to embed in a lot of those new or existing machines. And I'm actually sort of excited about the opportunity to retrofit a lot of those manufacturing lines. The problem is that this is not an easy, self-serve SaaS type sell. It's really sort of heavy-duty enterprise sell with super long sales cycles, massive sort of friction to deployments, and people who really want to just get it done, but don't want to interrupt or disrupt anything they do. And there lies one of the challenges is, in order to really leverage IoT, you have to change the way you do things. And when you go to manufacturing lines, people have been doing sort of something the same way for 5 or 10 years, and they're really sort of hesitant to change because they're not bought in on the value of the technology and its return on investment.
And I quote the Huffington Post, I think you're playing it down a little bit. I get to look at AI, VR, AR, robotics, space tech. Dude, this is freaking incredible. Your words in the Huffington Post. So there seems to be a lot of excitement around the topic. Thanks for that. And we maybe get back to this a little later. Benjamin, my opening line for you was, why am I the moderator? You're the writer, you're the keynote speaker.
Any of us.
And we started to moderate,
really well.
so yes.
Yeah?
And I think, any of us could be moderating. So very simply put, I'm a VC, I'm an investor, so I'd much rather talk about our portfolio companies than moderate a panel. And the reason is also because I think in many cases, as VCs, we, and particularly as specialists in our case in hardware, we have insights on a lot of information that the general public and other more generalist investors don't have. So I was mentioning earlier, we've done 200 hardware investments. I'm not sure if there's any other company in the world that has done as many in hardware.
No one is that crazy.
No one is that crazy. So of course we do very early stage. So it's like at the beginning, very small checks and then scaling. But just to mention a few kind of interesting things to kind of elaborate on what Jeff said. One company we invested in from Chicago named Amper, they created sensors that you can put on machines that can listen to their vibrations, their sounds, and their energy consumptions to help do predictive maintenance. And if you consider that in almost any industry using big machines, downtime is the worst thing possible. It costs hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. This is kind of an easy sell. Of course, you need to test first with the machine, prove you have value. But if you can save an hour of downtime, like spending $100,000 on any solution that can save you that, is an easy sell. Now, when you want to sell machines rather than sensors, it's more complicated. So recently, we have another case of a Chinese company called Elephant Robotics that is making a collaborative robot. So cobots, maybe you heard of that. That's kind of one other thing that was trendy like a few years ago, like, oh, robots alongside humans. Reality is that it's not that useful. I mean, it's kind of useful to have robots alongside humans. You save space. They can share tasks and things. But what's even more interesting is to find a cheap robot that can do something very specific that only a human could do before. So for instance, they installed in one automotive equipment manufacturer a robot to just push buttons on car equipment. That's something that somebody had to do day in, day out. And now you have a robot that costs $20,000, $30,000, so quite cheap for a robot, industrial robot, that can do that. So when you're a factory and you're looking at automation, you make your calculation. Is this going to pay for itself within 24 months? And if the answer is yes, it's kind of no-brainer to automate. And if it works, then you scale it up all across your factories.
Yep.
So that's in a way, that's how that aspect of automation, that aspect of IoT is kind of an easy sell because the difference between probably a Fitbit and industry is that industry calculates ROI. If you can demonstrate ROI, prove it, it's sell.
Fantastic. But for you personally, when did that become an investment theme that you were interested in?
6 years ago when Hack started 6 years ago investments in hardware. At that time, there were a lot of consumer stuff, a lot of gadgets. We did 100 Kickstarters. And then gradually, we saw that the type of companies that were coming to us were less and less hobbyists and tinkerers and makers, and more professionals, people with industry experience, people with PhDs. And these days, I'd say consumer is about 20% of what we do, and a growing part is industry, health, and enterprise. Yeah, and that's probably started about 3 years ago.
Thank you.
Because we're at the forefront, like super early. So.
Nicolas, I think you represent, of course, a huge fund here in Europe, and with investment theme which is not very concentrated on one theme, but many. And also from the stage perspective, you go from early to late. Looking at for one of your portfolio companies, I think you're also a board observer or board member, Exotech, within the logistics space. Tell us a little bit about supply chains and logistics and what role the IoT plays in that area.
Yeah, I think that it's the same basis. It's meaning that we're looking at industrial space for not so long time, since not so long time in the past. And what we saw is that the guys at Exotech, they were able to provide through intelligence and automation great ROI for the customers. So what Exotech solution does is basically they build a fully automated infrastructure to help retailers store and pick up all their B2C orders to be sent to end customers. And they're doing that by kind of making collaborate fleets of 30 to 50 to 100 robots that can just kind of bring the goods to manual hand picking.
Is it like the Kiva robots in Amazon warehouses?
It's exactly like the Kiva robot, but I would say the next generation of the Kiva robot.
So they can pick too?
They can pick as well.
They don't just move things?
Yeah, they move things. They go up in 3D, so the Exotech's storage solutions are denser. They go up to 12 meters against 2.5 for Kiva at Amazon. And then they pick and they bring the single back with the proper items to the hand pickers. So that provides a better flow of products into the system and better productivity. So that was pretty amazing. And just I would like to say another word about a company that we have not announced yet. We're announcing it next week. It's a French company, and that's a co-investment with Siemens, with Next47. It's an industrial analytics software platform that kind of plugs into production lines. They have 800 production lines equipped all over the world. And kind of working with thousands of parameters into the production line, they help optimize the condition of production. Because it's true that predictive maintenance and optimization of the downtime is a huge pain for those industrial players. But it's also true that in the 90% where the machines are running and producing, there is very often a cost of overquality. So what they do is they help optimize the processes, optimize raw material consumption, optimize energy in the process, and then help their end customers save money.
So from what I hear, I think it's safe to say that we all agree on that there's an interesting investment opportunity in that field. I mean, right now, it's probably not yet materialized to a great extent in terms of exit proceeds. How do you see or how do you evaluate the potential? Who will be the buyers of these startups? What will be the metrics that we'll be evaluating them on? And do you see any differences geographically speaking as well?
There's been a couple of exits in the space because early entrants, had the opportunity to join sort of larger platforms. We do believe that there is, an opportunity to always invest. I think the key question is who actually gets to fund those companies. And so, at least in the Valley, because IoT has been around for such a long time and hasn't really delivered on its promise, there's a lot of skepticism. And so, what we found is that there's actually a lot of interest from either strategics or Asian investors to fund US companies in the space. US investors are looking, but there's always sort of this, oh, I've heard this pitch 10 times before, and no one has really sort of delivered on it. And so saying, but trust me, this time is good, it's always sort of the challenge with any sort of new technology that is taken from like the commercial space applied to machines. Like commercial drones are exactly the same. Everyone agrees that commercial drone is a real market opportunity, but as to whether it's going to materialize in 2, 3, or 5 years from now is a big question. And so for us, it's really looking at opportunities which can get to large-scale revenues quickly and have enough appeal to get different types of people interested to do their Series A, Series Bs. Recently, for example, one of my companies just signed, closed a round with a very large sort of manufacturer as their lead for the Series A, which is very unusual for us to bring a strategic at Series A. But given that they're actually going to use the technology, it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Okay, well, it's interesting. So there's a little bit of a corporate element in this as well.
Yep.
I mean, one of my personal thesis has been, if we look at different industries and how we've seen commerce, media being disrupted maybe 10, 15 years ago, I think the incumbents were pretty much asleep, and there was time and scope to build really big competing platforms. Mm-hmm. But looking at some of the big industrial players today, they're all but asleep.
They're very active. They're all looking at making investments. Yeah. They have venture arms. They're very active. Another of our companies just got an investment from Bosch. Next 47 invested in another company, but on the software side. So all those sort of big manufacturing sort of companies are definitely very active.
Yeah, I mean, just from the top of my head, just thinking of large exits, like 100 million plus, there's been 2 companies in robotics from Denmark. One is Universal Robots, another one is MIR, M-I-R, both acquired by a US giant called Teradyne for hundreds of millions. There's another one doing IoT things in Japan, got acquired by a telco named KDDI. They do kind of a, like simplify the use of IoT with networks. Of course, there's KUKA, the big industrial robot company in Germany that was actually a market-listed company, got acquired by a Chinese appliance maker called Nader for like 5 billion. So, but those are kind of older businesses, most of them. I think that what's interesting is to see this next generation, which is more nimble, which makes overall cheaper things, cheaper product that can be used in many situations. And I totally agree with what Jeff said, that strategics are very active, Asian investors are active, either from manufacturing side or from just companies like Tencent, Alibaba, also putting money into hardware. And more generally, I would say that actually more Chinese rather than Asian in general. Chinese are not afraid of hardware because they have supply chain right in their backyard. Whereas in the US, in Silicon Valley, I think pretty much everybody moved to software a long time ago. And going back to hardware feels almost like a step back. And some of them been burnt by prior experiences that were maybe premature compared to where we are today.
In terms of evaluating the deal flow that you look at Iris from a pure VC perspective, are you taking different measures in looking what is a seed stage, A stage, B stage, or are those the similar metrics that you track for these companies? I mean, specifically with the long sales cycles and then large contract values, it's not the same as evaluating your typical enterprise SaaS company. How do you deal with that?
Yes, it's true. In every stage, it's a little bit different, but I would say that our position on the space is that there's definitely a window of opportunity today to take some vertical use cases into that industry and overperform what the incumbent players are doing today. But also, I personally believe that we also have a long development cycle in those companies before getting them ripe enough for an acquisition down the road. Because when we look at the industrial ecosystem, it's a very mature ecosystem with very large player and very large equipped bases in manufacturing, but also in logistics. And those guys are able to write checks in billions, but they have not proven yet that they might do that only on a technological basis. So when we look at companies at Iris, we kind of try to project their development a little further that we might do with other companies and try to get them in the hundreds of millions, to see how to get them in the hundreds of millions of revenues before looking for a more mature industrial exit.
Yeah, maybe just to say a word about other industries than manufacturing, because we've been insisting a bit on that, is when you look at industries like construction, mining, oil and gas, those are industries that have been really lagging behind in terms of innovation. And like recently, we invested in one company called RockMass. They have made a device that allows to basically scan a mine gallery to understand if it's safe. And normally, that's a place where you send an expert that has to spend time in the gallery, kind of eyeballing the thing. It's not very precise, and it costs a lot of money, and it's very risky. And now you can actually, do a 3D scan of the thing. So just to show that there's a lot to do, but those are kind of non-sexy industries that represent billions and billions. And if you can solve problems, you have very little competition because very few people are aware of the industry or willing to get into and putting effort.
What about, if I may, the entrepreneurial talent? Like who are the people that are creating these type of companies? I mean, one of our big thesis for this current fund is that there's a renaissance of the in engineering entrepreneur again, yeah, but not in the sense of computer engineering, but like machine engineering and stuff. Is this something you would echo? Do you see that as well? That we're kind of different type of entrepreneurial personalities back in the game?
As I look at our stable of entrepreneurs in the space, it's two kinds. One is I've been practicing manufacturing or sort of deep industry expertise, and I now know exactly what is the software or hardware solution which I need to bring to it. And others are like the renaissance of engineers. So the two founders of Arch Systems are two mechanical engineering PhDs from Stanford, and those are the guys who have come up with this, really sort of elegant architecture to get hardware and software to be, adapted very quickly to the needs of a given industry, so they can scale across different types of sectors without having to rebuild everything, just a couple of sensors and a couple of components. So I would say as we see both.
Yeah, maybe a quick comment on that. For us, it's kind of 1/3 each, like 1/3 kind of young or recent grads, 1/3 people with some experience, and 1/3 people with a lot of experience, roughly.
Okay, I think we're pretty much done. I don't want you to remember me as the guy who came late, so
you want to leave early.
So my name is Tobias. I, together with partners, I run a small fund in Berlin called Join Capital. We invest in enterprise and industrial solutions, and we specifically target European markets that need help in accessing the German industrial base. That's where most of our capital comes from, and that's where we have a vast network. And so if you're in that post-seed A stage and doing interesting things in industrial and enterprise tech, we're very happy to talk to you. And sorry again, it's really happened to me for the first
Tobias,
time.
we will always remember you as the German guy that arrived late. This is fantastic. Means the Germans aren't perfect. Please, round of applause for Jeff, Benjamin, Nicolas, and Tobias.